Welcome back to my channel, Happy Hookers, and today is the first in a 3-part series of how to crochet for complete beginners. So we're going to cover what you need, how to use it, how to get started, and then provide a few simple exercises to get you going. So in terms of tools, you'll see we've got a few things here. Now I won't go into tools too much because the likelihood is if you're watching this video then you hopefully already have some yarn and you already have a crochet hook, which is really all you need. There are some additional items such as darning needles, stitch markers and scissors, but they're not important. A pair of kitchen scissors works fine. Hair grips work just as well. And in terms of a darning needle, all that really is, if you're unfamiliar, is just a needle with a blunt end which allows you to weave those ends in. So if you have got any sort of old button tins or sewn boxes, raid them out. I'm sure you've probably got a blunt needle somewhere. So in terms of yarn, I'm going to put 3 combinations up on the screen. If you're a complete newbie and you have no idea what to buy, it's simply about getting the right thickness of yarn to suit the right hook. So the first one and the most basic one that a lot of people choose is what's known as a double knit yarn. So this is DK, it's often called, and you can get it in so many different colours, and I would pair that with a size 4mm crochet hook. Alternatively, if you want to go a little bit bigger, and often actually when you're learning yarn crafts or fibre arts, bigger is better to start with, just so you can see. So the other yarn that you might try is an Aran, which is a slightly thicker weight, and I would pair this with a 5mm crochet hook. And then if you like a chunky yarn, and be cautious, I'm not talking super chunky, just normal chunky, and I would pair this with probably something like a 6 to an 8mm. Now it's currently the end of May, so if you are at home and you're not going out too much, there are a couple of places that you can buy online, and I'll pop some links below to some online shops that have got some really great delivery services. Alternatively, you probably could, if you're in the UK, head down to the Range. I know that they're currently open, and get yourself a ball of wool and a hook. Alternatively, I think actually Sainsbury's sell some basic crochet hooks, so as long as you're going shopping for those essentials, and you pop a ball of yarn in the trolley at the same time. So yarn, the first thing we're going to learn how to do is a slip knot. So what we need to do is we need to get our end. Now there are 2 ways to use a ball of yarn. You can either unravel it from the outside. Let me zoom out a little bit here so you can see better. So you can unravel it from the outside and just use it like this. Absolutely fine. What it does mean, I'll just chop that end off that I've just caused a knot. What it does mean is your ball of yarn, as you use it, will kind of toss and turn and spin around the floor, which is fine. If you do have cats like me, be warned, they'll obviously try and eat it. The other way is you can pop your fingers into the middle, and if you're very, very lucky, you will be able to pull out what's known as a yarn bath, I know, and pull the ball out and pull the yarn out from the middle, and that will prevent the ball from spinning, because the ball will sit there quite nicely as you thread. However, it's got a sort of 50-50 success rate for me. I think some brands it comes out quite nice and some it doesn't. Anyway, so get yourself your yarn, and the first thing you need to do is you need to create a slip knot. So the way I do this, and I'm just going to zoom back in so you can see this better, and I'm going to clear these off screen so they're not so distracting. Okay, so I take my yarn and I wrap it around my finger like so, like that, and then I take my hook and I put it underneath the first one and I pull it through like this to create a slip knot. And if you're unfamiliar with a slip knot, the reason it's called a slip knot is because the knot slips along as you pull it tighter or pull it looser, like so. Sorry, I should do that in the middle. So I'm going to do that again one more time. So we're going to take our yarn, wrap it over our fingers and then cross it over. So the end attached to the ball goes at the back, like so. And then we're going to pop it through like this and pull it up. Okay, so one more for the slip knot. Okay, just let your fingers go and you've got a slip knot. So the most basic crochet stitch is what's known as the chain. And do not underestimate the chain, because whilst you're going to learn to chain, you're not just learning to chain, you're learning how to hold the crochet hook, and you're learning how to hold the crochet, learning how to hold the yarn. It's a little bit like driving. You have to learn how to move the car before you can learn how to navigate the road and the other cars. And it can take a while just to get used to holding the steering wheel, the gears, putting your feet on the pedals, etc. So I'm going to demonstrate a few different ways you can hold your hook. You can hold it as if you were slicing a piece of bread like this, or you can hold it as if you were writing a letter. And these are aptly named the knife hold and the pencil hold. Now I choose the pencil hold for most of my crochet, however I used to use the knife hold for chaining. So the act of chaining, and if any of you have ever had a knitting dolly, can you remember the knitting dolly? It had a loop and then you'd put another loop on, and then you'd take your first loop over your second loop and you do that all the way around. It's kind of a little bit like that, in that you're going to pardon me, you're going to work with two loops and you're always going to be taking one into the other. So hold your crochet hook, give it a go like this, give it a go like this, and essentially what you're trying to do is you're going to wrap your yarn around your hook. It's probably going to help if you hold the bottom of this loop and you're going to pull this one through this hole like this. So let me zoom in so you can see that. So you're going to take your yarn, put it over your hook so you've got two loops, and with your other one you're going to pull one through the other. And what this is creating is a chain. Now that looked really easy, but believe you me, for beginners this can be the most taxing thing. So a couple of things that might be causing you issues are making sure that this is wrapped tight enough so that it's not flopping about when you're trying to get it through, and making sure that you actually have enough room in this loop here to pull something through. If you've got this really tight like this, it's almost impossible to get it through. So by just giving yourself a bit more room so that you can, if you can push that through quite easily back and forth, then you're going to have no problem. So wrap it around, hold on to this piece and pull it through. So the second thing we need to think about is the angle of the hook. This hook is kind of shaped a little bit like a teardrop. It's got a round end and then it's got a pointed end. As you're going through, you see as I'm going through, I'm spinning it so that the point, the hook, is going to the bottom. And the reason I'm doing that is because, can you see, it's ideally shaped to go through that part. So I've kind of got it on its side like that. I'm hooking it and I'm pulling it through like this. So I would spend quite a bit of time practicing taking your yarn, placing it over your hook and going through like this. Now another method you could try is holding it in the pencil and holding your yarn out to the top like this. So wrap your finger around if you like to kind of pull it up. Hold on to your work because you're kind of negotiating three things. You're holding on to this to be able to give yourself leverage, can you see, with your hook and with your yarn. So I can spin around and pick up, spin to bring down, but as I'm doing that I'm still able to give myself leverage, can you see, so that if I were to try and do it like this I'm not going to get in. So by bringing this finger back, giving myself a little bit more, I'm going to be able to, and then I can sort of spin it and scoop it if you like. So it's almost like when you're scooping ice cream or mashed potato. If you have a, I mean, I'm not sure who actually has a mashed potato scoop, but if you're fancy, you're sort of scooping, spinning, and that's what's helping catch that yarn, is using that hook to scoop it around. So you might find at first, because it's all very new, that the physical act of wrapping round, holding on and pulling through like this, if you're a knitter you might be more familiar with it this way, is going to help. You then might want to try and progress on to a little bit of a different one. All I've done is I've got my little pinky around that and I'm hooking and pulling down like so. Now I would set yourself some goals so as not to dishearten yourself, and that's always a great idea when learning any new craft. Say to yourself, I'm going to set a timer on my phone, on my watch, and I'm going to spend half an hour chaining. I mean, what's half an hour really in the grand scheme of learning a new craft? I'm going to spend half an hour chaining, and at the end of my half an hour what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a look at my chain, because if you've got some big, some small, some that were tight, and that really doesn't matter. But look at the first few and then compare them to your chains at the end, because the biggest skill you can master is neat, even stitches all the way along. What this means is that you've mastered the hook, you've mastered the yarn, and together you've mastered your tension. And this is something that's going to set you up for the rest of your crocheting, if not all of your crocheting. It's very cliche to say, you know, don't run before you can walk. However, yes, it might be nice to create, say for example, I've got here a beautiful circular crochet coaster, but it'd probably be more disheartening to make this and it be uneven and it be buckled and you to have split stitches. I mean, this is a beginner project. This is something which I'd say after 2 to 3 hours worth of crocheting you could probably very easily master, and this is one of my videos, so I would recommend persevering to be able to create some beautiful things like this for the home if that's what you're interested in. So keep on chaining, set yourself some goals, and once you feel comfortable that you can create a lovely long chain, just keep going. I wouldn't pull it down, I wouldn't start again, because it's important to see your progress. And once you're happy that you've got a nice long chain, what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at building the next stitch, which is called the single crochet. So the single crochet is a US term, and you might think, okay, you're from England. I'm actually based in Lincolnshire in the Midlands, if there's any Lincolnshires, and shout out to you. However, I learnt with US terminology, and a lot of patterns I follow have US terminology, and I think once it's sort of ingrained in your brain, that's kind of how you roll. So if there are people that are already familiar with crochet stitches, this is called the double crochet. But to be honest, it doesn't matter. All you need to know is we're going to learn the smallest stitch. So the chain is the foundation, and we're going to learn the smallest stitch. And unlike knitting, which really only has sort of 2 stitches, knit and a purl, and then you create combos, crochet has a lot of different stitches, and the difference is in height. So when we crochet from right to left, if you're right-handed obviously, and then we turn it around and we go back the other way and we go right to left, and we're very much sort of building a wall. And the stitches are the bricks, and each stitch is a different height of brick. So they're always roughly the same width, but they're a different height. So we're going to create the smallest height, the shortest stitch, and that is called the single crochet. So to get started, what you're going to be doing is you're going to be crocheting all the way back down this chain. Now take a look at the anatomy of the chain, and it's really good to study and get familiar with the stitches, because when you get into patterns and you go wrong. What often prevents a beginner from understanding where they went wrong is not understanding kind of what the stitch looks like, which stitch they've just created. So being able to recognize the parts of a stitch again is a really good technique. So the top of your chain will look a little bit like a braid or ears of corn, essentially little V's, and on the back you've got a single little tiny stitch on the back connecting these V's like so. So when you're crocheting into a chain stitch, you do it slightly differently from any other row, and it's simply because you don't have a lot of stitch to grab onto. So what you're going to do is you're going to insert your hook into the V's, picking up only one of these loops like this. So what I would do is I would place your hook, ignore the loop going into this first stitch, ignore that because we never work that, because essentially you're going to be going back into the same hole that your loops come out of, and you know, you can imagine all that's going to do is pull it back down. So I've popped that in wrong, hang on, there we go. So pop your hook back into, let's ignore this one and let's go into the second one. Pop it in and through. And the first thing to know is, could you push it in easily? Did it go in and there was a huge gap, or did you have to really push it in? Because if you had to really push it in, I would suggest practicing chaining a little bit more, because getting the chains nice and even is part and parcel of being able to comfortably push my hook back in and out without splitting my stitch, splitting my yarn, and being able to work in. So you're going to push your hook into the first V, and this is, we call this into the work. You're then going to do what you did originally, you're going to yarn over, so you're going to wrap your yarn around, and then in the same way we did the chain, you need to take this back through this one here. So it's exactly the same as doing a chain. You've pushed your hook into your chain, you've yarned over, and you've pulled it back through the first loop on the hook. So that's the first part of the stitch. The second part, to complete the stitch, is a little bit different. We yarn over, and all we have to do here is pull it through both of them. Now it doesn't matter if you pull it through one and then you pull it through another, or you pull it through both at the same time. Now this is going to look a little bit weird and a little bit odd, because you're going to be thinking, okay, where am I going, what am I doing? Simply because it's the end. So this hole that we've created, don't worry about that. That's simply because it's stretched the little bit of a chain that you've just come out of. So all we need to do is ignore this hole, and can you see we've got another little V here? 1, 2. You're going to place your hook into that next V, and what do? We're going to wrap our yarn around and we're going to pull it back through, and then we're going to wrap it round and pull it through both the stitches. And can you see now, if we sort of level it up, remember we're kind of right to left, so ignore the hole that you've kind of created, go in. So you're going to go, and let's learn some terminology, into the work, yarn over and pull back through. 2 loops on the hook, yarn over and pull through both loops. Into the V, into the work, yarn over, pull it back through the same as you would a chain, 2 loops on the hook, yarn over through 2. So there's 2 parts to this stitch. There's inserting into the work, yarning over and pulling back through the work, and then there's yarning over and pulling through both loops on the hook. And can you see now what we've got is we're starting to build along this chain, and if we take a look at the top of the stitches we've created, can you see they look exactly the same as the chain? Another little row of V's all along the top, because that is essentially the top of a crochet stitch. So let's have another go into that V, yarn over and pull back through, yarn over and pull through 2. Insert, yarn over, pull back through, yarn over, pull through 2. And I've used all sorts of analogies to teach people to crochet. I've had 8-year-olds, you know, this is the fox and it's going into the corn, to remind them where they're going, etc. So this is the single crochet. Practice the single crochet all the way along your chain and just keep going. And what we're going to do is we're going to finish this video by showing you what to do when you get to the end of your row, should you wish to crochet all the way back again. And then what you can create is a nice little sampler square. So I'm just going to speed the video up a little bit here till I get to the end. See, if this happens as well, what's happened is I've just split my yarn. Take it off, pull it back, give it a little twizzle and start again. Do not worry, it happens to the best of crocheters, is a split piece of yarn. Okay, so just keep single crocheting and I'll show you how to get to the end. Okay, so we've got our row of single crochet and it probably will curl up like a little piggy tail, and that's absolutely normal. Absolutely normal. There we go, we can sort of give it a squish. Perfect. So once you've got to the end, you're going to chain 1. So can you remember, all you do is you go yarn over your hook and you pull that yarn through that loop that was on your hook, and then you're going to spin your work around. It doesn't matter if you spin it to the back, it doesn't matter if you spin it to the front, whatever your preference is. I think I usually spin it to the front because then my yarn is at the back. And then you're going to take a look at what you've got here. So you've got your loop, and can you remember that we never crochet into the stitch that the loop is coming out of? And that is exactly why we've chained, because if we hadn't chained, we wouldn't have created this stitch, and therefore we wouldn't have been able to work into the first stitch along the row. So by creating ourselves a chain, and this is called a turning chain, it means that we can once again miss this and go into this one, which is, if we look down the row, the first stitch in our row. So from now on, you're going to crochet slightly differently, and that's the reason why I'm going to finish with this. Instead of going through into the center through one of the loops, you're going to go underneath them. So you're going to take a look at the side, and can you see here, you're going to be able to insert your hook quite nicely through both of these from front to back, and all of your stitches are going to be in both of them. Now you might find when you're looking at it that this is slightly angled down. Can you see? I don't know if I can show you, but your V's will be slightly angled back, and the reason they're slightly angled back is because you stitched into the back V. So what I would recommend is just tipping your work up slightly to face yourself rather than crocheting looking at the side. Just tip it up and have a look so that you're making sure you're putting your hook through both of them. So I want you to consider this as one piece. So when you're yarning over and you're pulling back through the whole of it. That's why we call it the work. It's not just pulling through one or thinking of it as pulling through two. It's just pulling through the whole thing so that you've still only got 2 stitches, rather 2 loops on your hook, and then you're going to yarn over and pull through both loops. So that again, and we're still doing the same stitch, single crochet, we're just going through the whole of the stitch this time. So we're going into the work, yarning over, pulling back through, 2 stitches, 2 loops, I've got to start saying the right thing, 2 loops on our hook, yarning over, and we're pulling back through. So try that one more time. Inserting into the work, going through both of the V's, yarning over and pulling back through, yarning over and pulling through both stitches. Insert into the both of the V's into the work, yarning over and pulling back through. You'll be sick of me saying yarning over because I'm starting to get bored of it, but yarning over and pulling through both loops on the hook. And that is our single crochet. You hear my neighbours. It's such a sunny day. I've got the windows open and everyone's playing outside, so it's currently lunchtime for me. I'm working from home, so nice little break. So carry on with your single crochets until you reach your very last one here, and then you're going to chain one, and then you're going to carry on going all the way back. Now, a couple of things to look out for as you're building your little sample piece is whether it starts doing this or whether it starts, doing this. Whether it kind of looks pretty straight, and that's the biggest thing for you, is working out whether or not you are managing to increase or decrease your stitches completely by magic. So what I would suggest doing is get to the very last stitch here and then count your V's. Now don't count this little sort of bobbly bit here, ignore that. That was your turning chain, and that just sits nicely down the side. Think of it as like a little border. Count your full V's all the way along. So say you count them and you've got 15 all the way to here. To do a turning chain, carry on, and then after you've done another couple of rows, check if you've got 15. If you find you're struggling and you've got 14, 13, 16, what I would do is when you begin here and you know you've got 15, is I would count as you go along. 1, 2, 3, count as you're stitching. Count as you go along. Because it could be simply that you're putting too many in the end, or actually this stitch here has kind of slipped down a bit and you've missed off this one. Because although I said don't worry about this little blob at the end, it really doesn't look like a V, does it? Whereas this one, although it's slipped down, it does look like a V. Can you see? It's quite clearly is a V. Anyway, so I'm rambling on and nobody needs that. They want to get on and get crocheting and make beautiful things for the home. So thank you ever so much for watching this tutorial. So you've got your yarn, your hook, you know how to create a slip knot, you know how to chain, and you know how to create the smallest stitch, the single crochet, and you can create yourself a nice little square or whatever sort of shaped piece you want, and just enjoy feeling confident holding your hook and holding your yarn. And I'll see you back for episode 2, where we'll be taking a look at a couple of different stitches, the half double crochet and the double crochet, and then we'll be making at the end of that video a lovely coaster known as the infamous granny square. These are as old as time. You've probably had a blanket from it, and the great thing about this is it's made up of only 2 stitches, so everything you will have learnt will stand you in good stead to make this, to place your lovely cup of tea. So thank you ever so much from Crochet and Tea. If you like what you see, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe. I'll be posting the next instalment of How to Crochet for Beginners at about 5 o'clock next Friday, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.